The two richest men in India are now gearing up for a fight against each other.
The next decade will see us invest more than $100 billion in the energy transition space and further expand our integrated renewable energy value chain required for green energy generation.
We are on track to fully commit and invest up to rupees 75,000 crores to establish this manufacturing ecosystem. I'm proud to say that by 2025, Jamnagar will also become the cradle of our new energy business.
Mukesh Ambani and Gautam Adani are the richest and most powerful businessmen in the country. While they are always switching places for the top place, each of them is worth over $100 billion. Even if you spend 23 crore rupees every single day for the next 100 years, you would still not be able to spend $100 billion. That is how much money they have. And the two have reached here by conquering different industries. Mukesh Ambani's ascent started with his father, Dhirubhai Ambani. Together, the father-son duo built the largest oil refining and petrochemical empire in India. And then Mukesh expanded his empire. First, he conquered the telecom sector and then the retail sector. But Gautam Adani, on the other hand, has created a different legacy of his own altogether. During his lifetime, he was able to surpass what the Ambanis took 2 generations to build. He began his empire by dominating the port sector of India. And then he gradually expanded into construction, power, coal and mining. His portfolio today is extremely diverse. He holds a stake in over 10 listed companies. But did you notice something unique here? So far there has been zero overlap between the two. Both Ambani and Adani had been creating their own distinct empires. Each of them respected the territory and boundary of the other. But all of that is changing now. We are set for the biggest industrial battle in the history of India. Adani and Ambani are both entering the renewable and green energy business. And the competition has already begun. Jamnagar is the energy capital of the world, which houses Reliance's largest petrochemical refining facility. And Mukesh Ambani recently said that by 2025, it would also become the cradle of their new green energy business. He is creating the Jamnagar Refinery of the future, which he is calling the Dhirubhai Ambani Green Energy Giga Manufacturing Complex. Once complete, this complex will be the world's largest and most integrated new energy facility at a single location. But exactly opposite to Jamnagar, on the other side of the Gulf of Kutch, is Mundra in Gujarat, which is Adani's home ground. And Adani recently said that this is where he will be building the world's largest renewable energy complex. He says that this complex would produce everything from solar panels to wind turbines. But there can only be one largest renewable energy facility, not two, right? And that is why the competition between the two is certain. And both of them already know this. In June 2021, Mukesh Ambani announced he would invest $10 billion into his green energy business. But just a few weeks after that, Gautam Adani announced he would invest $20 billion into the exact same business. It was almost as if it was a direct response to Ambani's announcement. So after peacefully coexisting for decades, why are Ambani and Adani now breaking the boundaries and entering each other's turfs? What is this green energy business that is so lucrative that the two richest people in India are investing billions of dollars into it? What is at stake for India here, and who will emerge victorious in this battle? Before I answer that last question, let's see why this battle is happening in the first place. See, energy is the fundamental pillar of any country's development and economy, and India is no exception. As one of the fastest growing economies, India is the third largest consumer of crude oil in the world. But there's a problem. Virtually none of it is produced in India. India is also the third largest importer of crude oil in the world. 87.7% of the total crude oil consumed by India last year was imported. And this gives rise to two problems. The first is the huge cost associated with it. Crude oil imports have consistently been one of the largest contributor to India's overall import expenses in the past 5 years. It has accounted for as high as 25% of all our import costs in this period. Even last year, India spent over $132 billion in crude oil imports. But the second and even more severe problem is that crude oil is not a sustainable resource. It is a polluting and a non-renewable energy source. So not only is it unsuitable for the carbon emission goals of the global economy, but it is also limited in supply. The US EIA estimates that the world supply of crude oil might be able to meet the global demand until 2050. easily. But given the depth of the Earth's core, we might keep finding new oil wells. However, mining and extracting that oil will become more and more expensive, and eventually extracting crude oil will become economically unviable. So it will continue getting more and more expensive until eventually we will run out of it. And the solution to these problems is green energy. Green energy is energy obtained from any source that is non-polluting and renewable, like solar and wind energy. So countries are moving to replace crude oil and coal with these green energy sources. But India doesn't only want green energy for its domestic needs. The master plan is to turn into a global powerhouse and exporter of green energy. See, crude oil has been one of the most important resources in the global economy. Every country wants it, and the countries that have oil get major geopolitical leverage. Saudi Arabia, for example, is one of the largest exporters of oil. So major importers like the US, China and India need to maintain good relations with them. Saudi Arabia is one of the largest military spenders, and their economy is built on oil. Their oil export revenue in 2022 was more than $310 billion. Now, green energy is going to be the fuel of tomorrow, and the countries who are able to become net exporters will be the Saudi Arabia of tomorrow. So India has been steadily moving in that direction. According to the Ministry of Power, as of 2024, only 54.6% of India's electricity came from fossil fuels. Almost 45% came from non-fossil fuels, and this is set to increase even further. The current non-fossil fuel capacity of India is about 200 gigawatts, but India has set an extremely ambitious goal of increasing it to 500 gigawatts by 2030. So it has to more than double in the next 6 years. But it is not as simple as just creating another 300 gigawatts of green energy. Green energy is not just a single energy source. In fact, if we talk about the 200 gigawatts currently being generated in India, this is how the split looks like. The largest portion comes from solar energy, which accounts for 84 gigawatts or 42%. This is followed by hydro and wind energy, which are head to head at 46 gigawatts or 23% each. A small chunk is generated by biomass gas, which is 10 gigawatts or 5%, while the remaining is created by small hydropower and nuclear energy. But by 2030, solar is expected to grow over 3 times to 293 gigawatts. The second would be wind energy, which will grow twice to 100 gigawatts. Hydro will marginally increase, while biopower and small hydro will remain small. So now it is clear that the biggest opportunity lies in the solar energy sector, and you would be shocked to know how far Ambani and Adani have already come in this sector. See, the solar energy supply chain can be broken down into 3 parts. The first is solar photovoltaic or PV modules. These are solar panels that convert sunlight into electricity. The second is solar parks. These are large areas where solar panels are installed to turn sunlight into electricity. And the third is energy storage. Solar panels generate electricity only when the sun is shining. So the energy needs to be stored in batteries for later use. It is important to note here that both solar energy storage and EVs commonly use lithium-ion batteries. And when it comes to solar energy, Adani already has a head start. Adani Solar is India's largest producer of solar PV modules. His stronghold in Mundra, Gujarat already has a production capacity of 4 gigawatts per year, and he expects to increase it to 10 gigawatts by 2027. For the second part of the supply chain, he is also building a mega solar park in Kutch, Gujarat, which is so huge that it will be the size of Mumbai when completed and have a capacity of 30 gigawatts alone. That is almost 1/3 of India's total solar capacity right now. And he is also planning to invest and produce batteries to store that solar energy. But where do you think Ambani is right now in this solar energy race? Well, he is behind Adani right now, but he plans to bridge that gap quite soon. The center of his green energy empire will be the Dhirubhai Ambani Green Energy Giga manufacturing complex in Jamnagar. Here, he will have 3 gigantic gigafactories. One to make solar PV modules, one to make batteries, and the third I will talk about in the next few minutes. By the end of this year, Reliance plans to have an annual capacity of producing 10 gigawatts of solar PV modules. That is 2.5 times what Adani has right now. And by 2026, he plans to double it to 20 gigawatts. And as if taking a leaf out of Adani's own playbook, Ambani is also creating a mega solar park also in Kutch, Gujarat, and he says it will produce 150 billion units of electricity in the next 10 years, providing nearly 10% of India's energy requirements today. Ambani also plans to dominate the third stage of solar supply chain by producing batteries. Reliance has already begun construction of a battery gigafactory with an initial capacity of 30 gigawatt hours. And similar to Jamnagar, it will be a backward integrated facility. You see, the Ambanis became rich precisely because of backward integration. Dhirubhai Ambani started Vimal as a clothing brand in 1975, but he soon realized that a significant portion of profits was going to his yarn suppliers. So he started making polyester yarn. But then he realized that yarn needs polymers and petrochemicals. So he built a petrochemical complex, and then he realized that petrochemicals came from refining crude oil. So he started refining crude oil as well, establishing complete control over his supply chain. And that was how he built the Jamnagar Refinery. And now, almost 50 years later, his son wants to do the same thing again. He will first start his battery gigafactory by just assembling batteries. Then over the next few quarters, he will integrate backwards to manufacture the cells that go into the battery. And eventually, he will produce the chemicals that go into the battery as well. So Ambani aims to create the world's only fully integrated battery gigafactory, which would give him a monopoly with high profit margins. And he plans to do the same with his solar gigafactory as well. It will produce PV modules, cells, wafers, ingots, polysilicon and glass all at the same location. The factory will literally take sand as the input and spit out ready to use solar PV modules as the output. Other than solar, both Ambani and Adani are exploring other renewable sources for electricity generation. Adani is the first private gas operator to commercially produce biogas, while Reliance plans to have 55 biogas plants by next year. Adani also plans to have a wind energy capacity of 5 gigawatts by 2027. But what if I tell you that there is a fuel that is going to be even more important in the future? It is a fuel that everyone, including the government, Ambani and Adani, has set their eyes on. And that fuel is green hydrogen. See, chemically, hydrogen is an excellent fuel. It has a high energy density per unit of mass, which basically means that 1 kg of hydrogen will release about the same energy as 3 kg of petrol or 2.4 kg of CNG. And when you burn it, the only byproduct is water. It is one of the cleanest fuel options. Theoretically, it is an excellent alternative to fossil fuels. But if it is so perfect, then why don't we use it right now? Well, that is because obtaining pure hydrogen has been extremely difficult so far. Although hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, it is rarely found in its pure form on Earth. So you have to extract it from other elements. And the extraction process itself can be very polluting. Depending on how it is extracted, hydrogen is known by different colors. And green hydrogen is when you take electricity generated from renewable sources like solar or wind, and then you use that electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. And the reason why green hydrogen wasn't popular so far is because renewable energy itself used to be very expensive. But with technological advancements, the cost of electrolyzers used in the electrolysis process as well as the cost of renewable energy has dropped significantly. The International Renewable Energy Agency reported that since 2010, the cost of solar powered electricity has dropped by almost 90%. So green hydrogen has suddenly become economically viable. And to capitalize on this, India launched the National Green Energy Mission in 2023 to become the global powerhouse of green hydrogen. The mission has an outlay of almost 20,000 crores and it aims to make India one of the largest green hydrogen producers and exporters in the world. The two major areas where the government intends to use green hydrogen is in vehicles and steel manufacturing. And both Ambani and Adani are racing to become the leader in green hydrogen. Apart from a gigafactory for solar PV modules and a gigafactory for batteries, by 2026, Reliance will also set up an integrated electrolyzer manufacturing facility to produce green hydrogen right there in Jamnagar. And you can't think that Reliance is alone in this race. Adani has also announced plans to spend $9 billion on its own green hydrogen venture in Kutch, Gujarat. And both Ambani and Adani claim that their green hydrogen facility will be the largest in the world. Right now, green hydrogen produced with renewable energy costs between $3 to $6.5 per kg. But thanks to the integrated facilities that Adani and Ambani are building, both claim that they will eventually reduce this cost to just $1 per kg. So just imagine that you will get 1 kg of hydrogen for 83 rupees, and that will run your car for thrice as long as 1 kg of petrol does right now. That is how game changing and cheap it would be. So you see what's happening here, right? Both Adani and Ambani claim that they will be the largest player in green hydrogen. Both of them claim that they will be the largest solar player, and both of them claim that they will be the largest battery player. But there can only be one. So the stage is set for the most epic industrial battles of all time. However, both Ambani and Adani face their own set of challenges. Mukesh Ambani is in a race against time. For most of his life, his oil to chemical refining business has been the core of his empire, but its revenue and profits are cyclical. They are also affected heavily by fluctuations in global demand and supply. And as the world moves from petroleum and coal to clean energy, he needs to establish dominance in this new fuel or he will fall behind. Gautam Adani, on the other hand, has a different problem staring at him, which is debt. While Ambani primarily uses equity for expansion, where he brings in investors, Adani uses debt or loans. The Adani group currently has a debt of 2.4 lakh crores, and its net debt to equity ratio stands at 2.2. This means that for every 1 lakh of assets, his company has 2.2 lakh rupees in debt. For comparison, Reliance's debt to equity ratio is just 0.65. While Adani's war chest is virtually empty, Reliance has a cash balance of 1.92 lakh crores. So it looks like Ambani certainly has the edge. If you want to launch your own D2C store, check out the link to my ecom masterclass in the description below. If you made it this far, subscribe here and follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram. The link is in the description below. Until I see you in the next video, goodbye.